two pretty big names are going to hit the market. The first one is running back Raheem Mostert, and the second one is cornerback Kendall Fuller, both released by the Miami Dolphins. Both of them over the age of 30 veterans. You got to ask the question of how long you're sticking around, what you're signing them for, what's the upside here, and potentially what's the downside. Both of them dealt with some injuries last year. Mostert took a significant step back from maybe his most successful year in the league the year before. Fuller played 11 games, didn't have an interception, lasted 1 year of his multi-year deal with the Miami Dolphins. I think Fuller is the bigger name of the two when it comes to a conversation. I think Mostert is the more interesting of the two when it comes to a conversation. I look at Fuller as a guy who's got 16 career interceptions. A year ago, the Pittsburgh Steelers were interested in him. They were certainly having him on the list. I mean, there were probably a dozen names on their list of potential cornerback options. Every veteran was most likely on there. Kendall Fuller was a name. He was coming from Washington. He was successful in Washington. He looked like a dude who you could get later in his career, maybe be a bridge player, but for right now, be a reliable corner who just surpassed 30. Made a lot of sense. Now he's 31, I believe, turning 32. You're looking at him going, you played 11 games last season. You only lasted a year in Miami. You didn't come up with any interceptions. You did only allow like 300 and some yards and a touchdown, which I think is impressive. But does he outweigh the other options? I would imagine Kendall Fuller is cheap, which works in his favor, and possibly the Steelers. I would guess that number is somewhere around $5 million, somewhere in that ballpark, which is probably $2 to $3 million, maybe less or maybe more than Dante Jackson's going to cost you. You're still going to sign him for a year. I mean, Dante Jackson, you might sign for 2 years, but you're still only signing these guys for 1 to 2 years. Maybe he's a filler piece. I look at the cornerback position as something that the Steelers could take a shot on the NFL, in the NFL draft. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but at the same time, I believe that a veteran is the way that they will go. And it makes more sense with the veteran class in free agency to just say, we'll figure out this problem next year. Right now, we need a running back. Right now, we need a wide receiver. Right now, we need to reshape the defensive line. Let's reshape the defensive front. Then we'll work on the secondary next year in free agency, wherever. Let's get some Band-Aids there. Fuller's a big-time Band-Aid, but I think Band-Aid at corner is what the Steelers are going to end up with because they have Joey Porter Jr. They need somebody else. I'm not against it. I think there's more. It's a more realistic name than DJ Reed. It's a more realistic name than Byron Humphries. It's a more realistic name than Chardavius Ward. It's maybe a little less likely than Dante Jackson, but depending on Dante Jackson's price tag, and if he goes for more than what we anticipate him going for, I could see it going up. But I would add Kendall Fuller to the list of possibilities. I don't know if I'm a favorite of it, so I'll ask you, if they were to add Kendall Fuller, are you very opposed to the situation, or would you be able to wrap your mind around it?
No, it's essentially bringing back a replacement for Dante Jackson. And I don't think you're getting anything drastically better, and I don't think you're getting anything drastically worse. I mean, you look at Dante Jackson, he didn't miss as many games last year, but he was injured for about the same amount of time. Dante Jackson has a lot of games played last year, but most of them were, hey, he played in the first half, then something happened with his back or something happened with his ribs, and he missed the second half of the game. So I think you're getting about the same level, and I agree. I think when you look at what the Pittsburgh Steelers have as far as needs, cornerback falls down in the NFL draft simply because you already have young guys. You need a veteran in that room. Joey Porter's going into year 3. Corey Trice is going into year 3 and has less experience on top of that because of the time that he's missed. And then behind him, James Pierre, is that your veteran option? No, I think that you're going to go out and get a cornerback. I think it's going to be a veteran, but I don't think it's going to be one of those top tier guys like you mentioned. Fuller slots perfectly into that second tier. I'd have to wonder why they would bring him in instead of just bringing Dante back. But again, maybe there's a world in which Dante wants to go somewhere else because he's going to hit the free agent market, or at least he has a chance to hit the free agent market if the Steelers don't ink him to a deal here in the next month.
Yeah, I would say number plays a massive role in that decision. Like
Mhm.
Dante could go out there and realize, like, yeah, the Steelers were fun, but we're not going to win a Super Bowl in 2025. And if that's the case, what's the difference between playing for them and playing for the Jets, who are about to offer me 11 million bucks a year, or the Detroit Lions, who need a corner, who are about to offer me this much money? And I think that there's a world of possibilities out there for Dante Jackson. I don't think the Steelers are going to be the only team that are interested in him, because the Steelers will be amongst the Lions, amongst the 49ers, those teams that don't want to spend a boatload of money on a corner, who are looking at that second tier option. And Dante Jackson's going to sit firmly above a Kendall Fuller in that mix. And at that point, why wouldn't the Lions say, yeah, come on, bring him over here. We'll give him, even if it is the same price tag, that's like your chances of winning a Super Bowl are significantly higher in a team like that. And I just think that those options could be available. I don't think he's going to sign before free agency. I would imagine the Steelers are going to take right up until the last moment to do something with a Justin Fields or a Russell Wilson, if that's the decision that they make. And they're not going to, unless they're calling at the same time, but that's not going to happen. Dante walks into free agency and they hope for the best at that point. Kendall Fuller, in my eyes, is a risk, scary risk. Might not work out. You better hope Corey Trice is comfortable, improved, and healthy for a full season. And you got to go find a better James Pierre, because you find yourself with Corey Trice and James Pierre as your starters for 7 games. That is a very scary place to be for a defense that has already struggled and is now losing. Like, there is no safety blanket at that point. It is Joey Porter better be phenomenal, because you better be playing Corey Trice versus number 2 every single time. Like, that's where you'd be. Mostert, on the other hand, I know a lot of people are going to look at it and say he's a 32-year-old running back. I'm not super opposed to Raheem Mostert. Maybe I'm crazy here. Maybe I'm overthinking things. Maybe I'm just too in love with the speed. I have no idea. But Raheem Mostert, to me, if you're going for a bridge player, which I think Jaylen Warren's your best bet, but I also don't know if Jaylen Warren's going to stick around in Pittsburgh for longer than a year. And if that's the train of thought here, if the train of thought is bringing back Najee Harris or going with new options, I go with new options. Put Raheem Mostert back there and draft a rookie and hope that it turns out to be exactly what Miami had. Great. At the same time, I'd go Raheem Mostert over Cordero Patterson 8 days out of the week. No questions asked. It would be, you could call me at 3 a.m. and say, pick one. It wouldn't even take me a second before I said the name Raheem Mostert. I think he's got still some upside. I get it. I get the down year. I do. I get it. But Miami also had a billion injuries and their offense stunk. Miami as a whole stunk. So maybe it works out for a 1-year guy where you could be the number 2 behind a rookie, or you could be the number 3 behind a rookie in Jaylen Warren. I actually really like the name Raheem Mostert. I think he's my favorite of the veterans that are available that fit what the Pittsburgh Steelers actually need at running back.
Yeah, I almost said something that probably would have needed to be bleeped out, but he's the shiniest piece of poo in the free agent market right now, because
Yes.
we've talked about the free agent market and what's available to the Steelers to add to their running back core, and there's not a whole lot. I mean, you can go for veterans like Aaron Jones, you can try to bring back Najee, but we don't really expect that to happen. At least I don't fully expect Najee to come back to Pittsburgh. Raheem Mostert's a guy that, like you mentioned, he's a bridge. Yeah,
Yeah.
you want Jaylen Warren to be that number 1 or that 1A to a 1B, and you want to bring in a rookie that can immediately make an impact, but they don't always do that. So when you bring in that rookie, because I do expect them to bring in that rookie, wouldn't it be nice to have Raheem Mostert there to take some of the load off of the shoulders of that rookie so he can kind of slowly build into his NFL self? I think that is a very, very good addition, especially considering that the ceiling is high for Raheem Mostert if he stays healthy. I understand if is doing a lot of lifting in that sentence, but that's why you're not bringing him in to be your number 1. You're bringing him in to be your number 2 at the beginning of the season and shift into your number 3 by the end of the season. I think
Yep.
if you can get him in that role for that type of money, why wouldn't you do that? It's another situation of like, yeah, Zach Banner in the summer, why wouldn't you bring him in? It's not going to cost you anything. And if he works out, cool. That's great. He's a monster. You can't teach size. Raheem Mostert, you can't teach speed, and you can't teach the experience that he has. That's something you just got to earn and you got to do. And that's something that he can hopefully bring into Pittsburgh and bring into that running back room. So again, I don't see a
I agree.
downside if he comes for that price and if he agrees
Yeah.
to that role.
And I don't think nobody's signing a guy who averaged 3.3 yards per carry, played in 13 games last year. Like 2 years ago, awesome, I get it, but you're 32 years old, you'll be 33 by the end of the season. You're not worth anything much in the NFL in free agency at this point. Like, especially in the year where there are nothing but young guys that nobody really knows about. So teams are going to take a shot on them and say they're cheap. Let's just go with them. Raheem Mostert's not signing a deal worth 6-7 million bucks. Like Raheem Mostert might come for a Cordero Patterson deal is pretty spot on. Like, just 2 years, 6 million bucks. Why not? Bring him in and say, we got money to spend. You save it by cutting Cordero Patterson. I think it works. Like, you could stick him back there as a kick returner. Him and Jaylen Warren as a kick returner would be so exciting. So exciting. That's what you're looking for with two running backs, not what you have. So I wouldn't be, I've also been a big, even since San Francisco, I've been a big Raheem Mostert guy. I just think he's got so much upside when he's healthy. At 32, like he's on the edge of his on the end of his career. But if you could get him for a good solid year just to figure it out, and then you go into next season, and if you just have to replace one, great. If you have a starter in whoever you draft, and then you have to replace 2 and 3, also fine. You could figure that out, and we'll have better options a year from now, either in the NFL draft or through free agency in one way or another.